welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And me, Robbie.
And this week we are bringing you our summer slashers.
Yeah, we're kicking off summer in style, as they say, you know, with a little everybody's favourite slashers, aren't they? You know?
Yeah.
Coming back in with obviously some of the releases of like the new Halloween coming out, the new Scream, the new Inner Violent Nature, which is supposed to be pretty badass.
That is true, yeah. And even stuff like newer stuff, you know, like X Maxine, stuff like that, also within the slasher kind of genre. We get one of those this year as well.
I think when is it A Violent Nature coming out in the UK? I don't know if it is.
I think I heard July.
I heard July, but then when I went on Cineworld to try and book things, it was like it didn't say it. But
I don't know, because it is quite a small kind of one. So it might be one that's out. It will literally we'll be able to watch it by other means long before it is ever made into the UK. Probably. Yeah. That's probably the case of what it is. But yeah, I've heard some crazy stuff about Inner Violent Nature, or just that there's a film where it's basically just walking through a woods.
yeah.
I've heard some really crazy stuff about the death scenes, but also just heard that it's just a bloke walking through the woods.
Just a bloke walking through the woods.
Like I said. Basically just all about it's like just following the killer, I think. I was like that, yeah.
It's like watching Bill Oddie, like one of his documentaries, or Birdwatch, or whatever they call that.
Yeah, like a classic nature kind of documentary, just following one man through a forest, and there you go. But the difference is every once in a while someone gets brutally mutilated.
Yeah, just how it happens.
Classic.
Yeah.
So this is summer slashers. Now, specifically summer, so it has to have somewhat of a link to summer.
Yeah.
We didn't specifically say it had to be certain things. I believe last time we did, now a while ago, we did top summer horrors.
Yeah, kicking off the summer season in style back then.
So that wasn't specific to a type of genre of horror film. It was any summer horror that could be included, and that was all kind of list. And kind of like that, I guess this one has the same kind of manner of which it could have been a film that was released in summer. It could be a film that's set in summer.
Yeah.
It could be something else related to summer. It may have summer in its title, which would imply it was summer, but it might not be about summer.
It might not be.
Any of those kind of things that might qualify. Now, in this case, obviously, though, it has to be a slasher film.
Has to be a slasher film. And we've also, we did say, this was the little, behind the scenes joke, was that we would just start recording and we'd be like, Friday the 13th part 1. Friday the 13th part 2.
That's it, we'll just say all the Friday the 13th.
Films.
Yeah. To be fair, we didn't even discuss before whether we have any Friday the 13th on our list.
Who knows?
Don't know.
Who knows? I'm tinkling.
I feel like we should have vetoed that off of the list almost and been like, you can't do that one, so what else can you find? Because this is the one thing. So Rob threw this one out there.
I threw this out.
I was like, okay, cool, that sounds good. That sounds like it'll work. And then I actually started looking for summer slashers, and I found that I couldn't actually, I was trying to rack my brain, and I had to do more of a search and be like, what summer slashers have I seen? I know Friday the 13th, and I know another one, which is an episode that we're going to be covering very soon.
Which was a film that I loved, man.
Yeah.
I got into that film. I was enjoying it. It was a fucking weird film. We're teasing for next week. It was a weird one, but I fucking loved it.
Properly weird. I mean, think of it, okay? It's a summer slasher, and it's weird as fuck, and has, let's just say, possibly the weirdest twist ever at the end of the film.
And a very controversial twist. A twist that's aged like milk.
Yeah, it's a twist that everybody knows. Yeah, and nowadays, if you're of a certain generation, may be disgusted by said twist and the use of it.
Yes.
But yeah, we're not going to say the name, but I assume that's not on either of our lists. Is that on your list?
No, but it would have been.
It would have. Yeah, that's the thing. I would have put that on the list, but to be fair, that would have made no sense because I hadn't seen it before we did the episode.
Exactly. Same.
So yeah, it also was normally one there. So now the one thing I will state straight away is that this is not necessarily the best. We didn't say top or best or anything like that for a reason. Because these are not necessarily the best slasher films or the best that you might see for summer. Because again, Friday the 13th part, it's just that. That's probably, when you think of a summer slasher, you're probably, I guess I'll just watch Friday the 13th.
And if you're like, what about not a summer slasher? You're like, well, I'll just watch Halloween.
Yeah. It could have been. That's the thing. I could have gone more for the, summer, the slashers that I like to watch in summer.
Yeah.
But that would have been probably an easier angle to go. But I somewhat decided that I'd stick my feet in the ground and go, no, I'm going to go with ones that are specifically are summer set kind of horror films.
Yeah.
Or literally like they are a summer slasher. And therefore, I found myself with a list of several. And I have more than the 3 that we each decide that we always are going to choose. And yet... I can't say again that these are my favourite films of all time, but they're different arrays, and each one is very different from the last.
Same. I've gone kind of I've got a generational span. When we were talking about what we got to do, I was also in the same mindset of just don't do Friday the 13th, don't do all of the Friday the 13th. And I haven't picked any. I will reveal that card. I'll show my hand a little bit. But I've kind of picked, a couple of years that I'm covering. I was also thinking of another one, which I'll keep in the back pocket, but that might come up for both of us, maybe. There's one that I'm expecting us both to have, maybe.
There's one that I think there's only one of mine that I think, unless maybe you kind of came across the same bit me, but there's only one that I think may be a crossover, and that's because it's the most obvious one that I could think of.
Maybe.
And it's the one that I think, but I also think it's the one that possibly we've rarely ever talked about on the podcast. So I decided, let's go for that one.
Let's find out. I mean, let's go. You go first. Kick us off with your number one choice. And if you haven't, remember to hit that subscribe button and leave us a lovely review. We're kicking off the summer with slashers. I mean, we were talking about summer, but it's been pretty piss poor so far in the UK.
Yeah.
Hopefully by the time this is out, it's actually fucking summer. And this gets you in the mood. So remember to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. Kick us off, Epo.
Number one, kicking off with, I think, what is the most obvious choice when you have the title of Summer Slashers is I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah.
Is that the one you were thinking you were going to
No,
hit?
it wasn't.
No?
It wasn't.
That seemed like the most obvious pick in my head of a summer slasher. Now, obviously, not all of the film actually even takes place it's summer to last summer, so it's definitely summer. It's definitely a slasher film. It's
4th of July, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
So it is. However, here's the thing, just to stick my little butt in there, I guess a lot of people would be like, maybe this isn't a film set during summer, because when you actually watch the film, you don't really get the impression it's summer. It's always kind of dark and cloudy and raining.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not quite, it's a coastal town, so it's not quite. That's why in my head for a second I kind of questioned myself then going summer to summer, because I know what you did last summer, but then I was like, I swear quite a bit, I thought some of it takes place not really in summer, but some of it does take place in summer, and the main kind of actiony parts of the film, or the main problem that happens, definitely is a summer-based problem. So, I Know What You Did Last Summer. Now, I'm assuming most people would know of this film, but if you do not, this was a big-time slasher following the vein of Scream when that became a big hit. This was probably the other major big slasher hit that kind of came out of that time. Now, didn't quite go off in the franchise way the way that Scream did, but it was a huge hit, and also written by the same writer as Scream, Kevin Williamson.
Yeah.
And also directed by Jim Gillespie, which I was going to say, I'm sure he did lots of other intros, but not really. He did Detox, which I think is with Sylvester Stallone. He's only done 5 films in his whole career, which is weird, because he did this hit one. You'd think he'd be back, or he would have done the sequel. But no, apparently not. But they probably should have brought him back for the sequel.
Yeah,
that was not as good. That was an odd one. The sequel. I don't know what happened with both the directing and the writing in that sequel. It's that one's almost like that's a guilty pleasure one, because it's got so many kind of bad parts to it, like Jack Black playing a Jamaican. Yeah,
I remember that being fucking weird. I've only seen that one. So
it's not too bad, but I still kind of like it in a certain way, but it's an odd one. But no, this first one is kind of a good mixture of a thriller with a slasher. It has our group of high school teens on their drunken night out, that accidentally run down a guy and decide to keep the secret forever. But that doesn't so work, as the following summer they start to get usual weird messages and people start to die one by one, including the message, I know what you did last summer.
I know, I seen you.
And yeah, a little bit like that. So it kind of draws, and it does draw inspiration from kind of the kind of urban legend.
Yeah.
The boatman, the hook.
Yeah.
It's got really
Lover's
cool.
Lane.
I love I do love the hook for the
miss-
whole hook attacks in this film and the murders and just the way they use it in this film is really like effective. And it has some really effective death scenes in here.
And he's an underrated kind of villain, the fisherman or whatever they call him, behind the scenes. Because it's kind of like it's quite a cool image. A hook's quite a good weapon. I always remember the guy who went on to be in The Big Bang Theory. Oh, his death, him being the first person to
Johnny
die.
Galecki.
Johnny Galecki.
Yeah.
Galecko. The Glec.
With the ice pick.
With the ice pick,
Yeah.
And it's a fun film, and it follows that 90s, who is it? It's
Who
not
is
so
it
much
kind of
like a
thing, yeah.
masked.
And that's kind of the nice part in this one is the fact that it doesn't end up leaning into it just being one of the friends. It does actually lean into like relating back to the original incident kind of thing and that kind of thing, which at the same time also kind of makes it a little bit harder in the sequel, which is why the sequel was a little bit tricky because the sequel kind of had a, it kind of was like, well, we killed the guy. Not like Scream where we can just be like
it's somebody inspired by it,
So they had to be basically Scream in the sequel. It had to be like it's got to be someone else, hasn't it, kind of thing. So it had to go in that direction for the sequel.
They accidentally kill somebody else. Just like, I know what you did again, mate.
And that's what I mean. I know there's even in the works. There is apparently another one in the works.
Yeah, I've heard
there has been talk of Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. coming back, which I'm not convinced by because it doesn't seem anything official or concrete. I keep hearing it.
Yeah,
they're talking about it. I think I've heard Jennifer Love Hewitt say she'd be interested in it, but as far as I'm aware, Freddie Prinze Jr. is pretty much done with acting and stuff like that, and has on several occasions. Even when talked about the genius of Scooby-Doo, he's even said he wouldn't really be interested in even come back for that. Yeah. And if he doesn't want to come back for Scooby-Doo, but he ain't come back for shit. You know what I mean?
I know.
He ain't come back for any of them films. You know what I mean? It's not happening.
Because there was. I know what you did last summer. I still know what you did last summer. There was a sequel to that one.
There was a straight to like a direct to DVD.
What was that?
Wasn't that?
I again know what you did last summer.
What was it? I'll always
know what you did last summer.
That was the one in my head, but I'll always know what you did last summer. It was from 2006. Oh, and there was also the TV series.
There was the TV series, which I started to watch, and then
I think I did watch the first episode, but it kind of that was in the same vein to me as which I did watch for longer than I did this one of the Scream TV series.
Yeah,
where I did watch the Scream TV series. I watched it for 2 seasons. It was on. I didn't watch the 3rd season because they barely released it properly and it kind of thing. And it was fine. It was okay, but it just didn't have the same score and it didn't work the same way. No. And it just felt like a really watered down new generation. It felt like you took a teen drama and then just added it for. It's like it was just added on for the sake of being added on.
It was like Riverdale.
Yeah, it's like you might as well just done a random murder mystery. All you've done is given the name of a franchise so that people would watch it to start with. It's basically
I remember was it like somebody got fucking drugged and they left him. I think that's what happened.
What on
in the TV series?
I know
what you did last summer. I think the twist was that one of their mates overdosed and they fucking flung him in the water.
Yeah, it had a much more modern teeny kind of mystery kind. It was like a Pretty Little Liars.
Overdosed on Xanax.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There you go. Just leave them to die.
Yeah, he had to leave.
That's what we do with our friends when they're drugged up. We're just like, fuck it.
Leave them to die, mate. It's the best thing.
So again, I don't need to go see this thing, but it does have some also, like you said, the Johnny Galecki one. Probably my favourite is the Helen, which is Sarah Jessica Parker. No, not Sarah Jessica Parker.
Gellar.
Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Yeah.
That's
I was saying Sarah Gellar.
Sarah Jessica Parker would be very different, especially if she was like mid 30 on then at that point.
And she was at the height of her career.
Yeah, there are some really cool ones, but I do really like her. Like her whole chase scene is so suspenseful. It's so good. And it's also, I think, a lot of people always say, and I think that's the character we have brought up before is her character as Death. I think I brought in one of our characters that didn't want to die or something like that because a lot of people liked her more than they did actually Jennifer Love Hewitt's lead. They found her a bit moany, and they found that a lot of people always confused why she was always demoted Sarah Michelle Gellar was always put as like this side character when she had the charm and charisma of someone who should really have been more of the leading lady of one of these franchises. Like, she would have made a kick-ass final girl, Sarah Michelle Gellar. Well, but she was always...
She would have been hot off Buffy. When this
that's what I mean. She was so hot right now.
She was so hot right now.
But they all... I mean, look at that lineup. Jennifer Love Hewitt, Ryan Felipe, Sarah Michelle Gellar, and Freddie Prinze Jr.
It's a handsome lineup, isn't it?
I mean, it is. It's a beautiful poster right there. Many people.
That's it. Well, look at us.
It doesn't matter who you like on which way. You could have put that poster on your wall and had a good time.
You'd beat off. Yeah, you're gonna love that.
But no, it's a really inventive one, and it is in my head. I don't know why, but it just seemed like the ultimate go-to of a summer slasher.
I think it's a fair shout, man. I watched it again for the first time like a few months ago. I mean, I watched it many years ago, and I watched it a couple of times, but this is probably the first time I've watched it in like 10, 15 years, and it is still, it's still just as good. It's such a well-made film. And it's almost you could almost forget that it's a summer film in a way, because it's, it's not camp-based.
Because that's the thing. Yeah. Like, in a lot of the only thing with a lot of slashers and stuff, they have to rely. A lot of them don't end up relying on the sun and the shine. A lot of them end up relying on the darkness, and therefore you kind of forget, this is summer. Yeah. Like, it's meant to be summer, but instead they go with dark and windy nights and stormy nights. It's like, is this actually summer?
Is this summer? Yeah.
Yeah, with a lot of them kind of thing. And the one we kind of looked at actually like has a lot of more in the night or in the dark or in the things like that. Friday the 13th, that one was pretty much a lot of daylight.
It goes between, doesn't it? Yeah.
But that's it. Just stop there.
Yeah, that's it.
Let's go on to your first job. The one that you are thinking of might be the other one that I considered, but then I dropped. So,
if it comes out, I'll call it. My first one, and this comes as no surprise to kind of anybody who has listened to the show, because we did an episode on it and its prequel. But it's X.
Yeah.
I fucking love X. It kind of captures that perfect kind of like 70s throwback to things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Town That Dreaded Sundown, grainy footage, kind of weird, slow, long shots, and it's in terms of cast, it's absolutely stacked. You've got Jenna Ortega, you've got Brittany Snow, you've got Mia Goth, and then the sexual man Kid Cudi, and it's full of like lovable characters. I went real deep when we were talking about it in terms of like the themes that I picked up. But in terms of just a slasher film, it just plays so well. It has perfect creepy moments with Pearl.
It does.
Where you're just like, what the fuck is up with this old woman?
Like perfect, like in the background character, her just watching the old lady, like what the fuck is going on there? Like when you actually notice her.
Yeah, and it builds the suspense so well. And there's a lot of great foreshadowing that we spoke about. Listen to the episode if you want to hear me gush over it.
Yeah.
And just bust a nut over X. But it's such a great film. And then when it kind of does kick over maybe halfway through as we're kind of going up to the third act, when the killings start, they come pretty thick and fast. You've got Kid Cudi with the point blank fucking shotgun, both barrels. You've got the guy getting his throat slit. You've got the fucking pitchfork through the eyes, which is so brutal.
Yeah,
and I love a pitchfork in a slasher film. I think it's underrated. Whenever I see one, I think, that's fucking good. That
it is classic. It is a lovely little. If you've seen Pearl, and it's a lovely little throw across as well, isn't it? That little, like the pitchfork running through, but it's such a good shot, kind of thing.
It's beautiful.
It going through,
and it's hard.
And it is, and I can never remember with that scene. And I think we talked about this before, but I can never remember. I don't know if my brain makes me think I see more than it, because I feel like you don't actually see, and yet in my head I keep thinking you see it like go through his head, and yet like go through the eye, go through his head or out the back of his head, and actually you don't see that. But my brain, I think, created that image.
Well, I think the film does play a lot with what you don't see in your mind, filling in the rest, because you do, you see him looking through, you see the pitchfork, but then I think you just see like his reaction. You don't see it fucking slam into.
Yeah, you don't see like that thing or like that slice through. Yeah, that's what I mean. I think my head made it gorier than
my head makes it that. Yeah,
which is good,
which is great. Yeah, But it's just such a good film, and it has a couple of twists in it that you don't quite really expect. I think if you go into it and you're like, oh, this character's hot, you know, like at the time, looking at what they're in, and then they just get randomly taken out, you know, and I was rooting for them the whole film. I was like, well, they're definitely going to survive. It just has these kind of really fun twists to it. It's beautifully shot, and you know, it's a throwback summer slasher. You know, it's great for kicking the list off. Like my cat is playing with a toy, and it's really distracting. I don't know if that's coming out in the audio.
The classic time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Briefly.
Well, and the one important thing that also came up in my choice as well is that one thing you want from a summertime is when it's nice and hot and everyone's out and getting out in their all of their skimpy bodies out. Like,
yes.
Robbie will be out in his Speedo this summer.
Yeah, mate, that's it. I'm
rocking it around.
As soon as it's sun, I'm in the Speedos.
Yeah.
You know, my
G-string Speedo.
G-string Speedo, string vest. Like, I don't care. I've been going to the gym a lot more. My body is still bulbous and grotesque, but I'm looking good.
But you're confident. Yeah.
But my confidence is at all time high.
Doesn't matter about your size, and that's the main thing, and that's why X is also a great choice if you just want sexual people and people getting sexy and horny. Then there you go. It's a perfect horror for that as well. And if you need that little sex scene in your life in a slasher, which I feel like a summer slasher needs a good bit.
Needs a little bit of pop,
or a little bit of a sexual element to it.
Yeah.
Then this is definitely the one for you.
Yeah, that's it. Let's hear your number 2. I think there's one film that we could potentially cross over on, and I think that's probably going to be my last one. It's not what I'm loading into the chamber, but I want to see. You know, I think it's going to come up.
I was going to say, yeah. There are also ones like X obviously came on mine, but obviously we'd done it recently, so I was like, I was like, I do love it, but I kind of went for in my head, I was like, I'm not choosing the ones I love. I was just like, I'm just going to choose ones that like so specifically like, what have I never done? I was like searching for, and that's why I made it harder for myself, because I was literally going for ones I was like, ones I've barely ever mentioned before. Yeah. Like, let's go right out there. So mine is a little bit of a left way, and this is why my last two I think are ones that people like may have never even heard of, or may have heard of, but been like, oh, I've seen that one, or I've seen the cover for that one, but never actually watched it. Mine is Broken Lizard's Club Dread.
I am psychic, man. I was just thinking, I was just there, and I was like, I was like, should I put my hand out and say, is it Club Dread? And I was thinking, like, as soon as you said, oh, it's a bit left field, my mind went back to this, like, moment where I was in Blockbuster, and I was looking at a front cover of a woman with a bikini, and she's holding a knife behind her, and there's a bunch of bachelors looking at her, and it said Club Dread, and I was like, this film has got to be the best film of all time.
Yeah, exactly.
Never seen it.
I feel like possibly this has been mentioned before, maybe after I watched it. I only watched it for the first time like a year ago, I think.
Yeah.
After having that exact thing, that exact post, that exact DVD cover, that exact one, looking at it every time I went into like a W.H. Smith's to have a look at some DVD or something. Yeah. For some reason, I remember that case was just always there. Dread. No one ever bought it. Like, the film was not successful. Always sat there and always wondering what it was, and not really knowing what it was, and never seeing it. But at that stage when I'd buy like tons of DVDs and stuff like that because I wanted any horror film and stuff like that, but never purchasing that one, never fully going for it, because it was somewhat of a comedy horror, in the vein of Scary Movie, kind of following the slasher trend again of probably like Scream and stuff like that, but it's not quite that kind of one, but it's a kind of a spoof of horror. While it somewhat takes it more seriously, it's more about the fact that it's done by Broken Lizard, which in America this is a troupe of like comedians kind of thing who work together. They've also done, I don't know if you've ever heard of Super Troopers. Another kind of niche, again, it's a very niche group like of comedians kind of thing who I've seen pop up in other films separately, but hadn't ever seen much of things. So I've never seen Super Troopers. I know there's a huge cult following for that film.
Yeah, I know it has a cult
that's
following.
In the like same era as like, you know, your Napoleon Dynamite, something like, you know, like niche films that had their audience, like did okay, did pretty well, you know, but that's because they had this very like cult following, or it's got a very unique sense of humor kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, because I think the only noticeable name that I could really mention there is Bill Paxton.
Yeah,
Bill Paxton plays like just the club owner, kind of like a previous like singer who had like a couple of hits or made it kind of like a Jimmy Buffett or whatever it is, you know.
Because I remember I was trying to think of who it was who's in it, and I'm looking through the cast now. I mean, there's Jay Chandrasekhar,
who is the director as well.
Yeah. Which I'm not going to attempt to try and say the name properly, but I mean he's been in quite a lot. But he's always kind of in those small kind of roles, isn't he? But man, I've always wanted to watch it, but I've just never got around to it.
Yeah, and this is the thing. I'd say, like, for some people, I'm sure they absolutely love it. You have to kind of be down with the fact that there's a kind of a niche kind of. Their humour's quite kind of. I was about to say idiotic, which isn't it's a bit. That's kind of feel. What's a low level juvenile? That's the word I'm looking for. The juvenile humour. You know, it's not even like, say, Will Ferrell Anchorman kind of thing. It's kind of below. It's like a step down maybe from there. It's not that there aren't some parts that I thought were like funny, the way that they play with characters and stuff like that. But yeah, it was like just popping into my eye there that it was a financial failure. It grossed 7.6 million. And it was made for 8.6 million.
Oh damn!
So it literally lost like money. It couldn't even make it to that total that it was made for. I think because Super Troopers had done well, so they kind of like, here you go, have some money, make whatever you want to make, and then they made it for a fair budget, and then
because
like,
it's a decent budget for a film that I just assumed
like that
was straight
kind of
to DVD.
squad. Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. So yeah, it's it's fine. It's got this. So yeah, he's a washed-up musician. Coconut Pete is him. You know, and this weird masked figure kind of is hunting these people through a jungle. It's kind of the opening of what you see, and like, and it has some interesting inventive deaths. There's the one that involves kind of where the guy's head is like decapitated and then put onto like a DJ spinning deck.
Nice.
And then it continues to like play with the music, and nobody freaking notices that the fact that the guy is just beheaded and just like spinning around, or just people don't notice. Or there's like one like through a maze where like people are like running through and like someone's getting like slaughtered. And like people are like all like going around, but again, it's kind of an obliviousness for a lot of the film of people not realizing what the fuck's going on, kind of thing. That kind of adds a little bit of
that's quite scary.
It's almost when they're trying. It's when they're trying a little bit harder that sometimes it felt a little bit too like too juvenile.
Yeah. But
when they actually just kind of let it play naturally, and like the fact that people like play into the tropes a little bit more, it's quite well done. It didn't feel like a complete rip-off. I've heard people say it was basically just a scary movie rip-off, but it didn't feel like it because it's not really the same. That's juvenile as well, obviously.
But that's very clearly like piecing together popular horror movie moments.
This is more of its own thing. This is, if you decide to do the, like I said on the last one, it's basically, in some ways, you could also. This is what the Jack Black Jamaican from. I still don't know. If you decide to make a film about him, and then take it to an island of killers, and he was just in the middle of it. There you go. You've got your film like that kind of thing.
Sounds like a carry-on film almost.
You know? Yeah, and it is. It's just it's fun in a lot of ways. It's got its beach island Caribbean-y setting kind of thing. I don't want to give too much because I feel like a lot of people have not seen it, so I don't want to like spoil like major deaths or anything like that kind of thing. But it's a fun little slasher to have a go at. I think if you can get with the humour, if you can't, it's probably going to throw you off it. It's not I can't say it's a good film.
Yeah,
it's like not a good film. It's like a culty horror kind of one that you can kind of watch. It has its moments. It's not, you know. It sadly it doesn't always embrace the horror in some parts as much as I thought it was going to. Yeah. Some bits are a little bit more, but then some bits they seem like they're just kind of lacking. Like it kind of is a film where they feel like they wrote a script and they had an idea and they had a setup and they're like, yeah, this is really cool. And then they kind of went out like, where the fuck are we going with this?
Yeah,
like it just feels like it just goes on and then it just kind of finally comes to like who is it? And it does play a bit into that like. Who is this masked killer who's doing this to the island kind of thing? Yeah. So at least on first viewing, at least you've got something to hold on
mystery.
to. Like, a mystery, which is always a nice.
I do like to be, you know, intrigued when I'm watching something. I like to figure out who's doing what, you know?
Yeah.
Which is why I don't like it when everything's very clear cut. I want to watch every film as if there's some kind of mystery, you know?
So yeah, not as well parodied as a scary movie, but it's still got some kind of charm for something that is like a completely forgotten one. I find.
Yeah,
it would have been perfect on a forgotten horrors list. Maybe it was on the forgotten horrors list. I can't remember.
I think it's just so weird. As soon as you were talking about it, just that vision just came into my head.
That is what is one of the cases, and there may be people out here who've got the same thing because you. Looked at DVD sale, went to Blockbuster or whatever so many times. There are some that I swear are just etched into my brain.
Yeah.
And that is one of the ones. That cover with the girl and the knife behind her back. I've looked at it so many times. There were just certain covers that are etched into my brain. Like the Child's Play 2 with the Chucky with the
Jack in a Box.
Yeah, Jack in a Box. I just remember looking at it so many times. Or Hellraiser, just having Pinhead on the cover. You know what I mean? The amount of times I'd looked at those covers, or House. I think the House with the fingers on the or House 2. I think it was where has the 2 fingers up on the front cover. It's just like I just remembered it. Like the amount of times I've looked at them, but never ever picked them up. It's in the last few years I've finally gone. I'm going to look at the ones that I never watched and go, the number one is, and this is because I literally owned it and still never watched it, was Ben Affleck's Paycheck. Or Matthew McConaughey's Sahara, or whatever.
Nice.
2 films that I've owned forever. Literally, I've had them for 20 years now on my case. Have I ever put them in the DVD player? No. I have once and then went, no, I'm not in the mood for this.
I'm doing the mood for Ben Affleck's Paycheck.
Other people out there may have that same feeling. I have the DVD of some of these, and I've never put them in the goddamn thing and actually watched them. Like that's the weirdest stuff. They're etched in my brain because I actually own them, but I just never gone.
I must own this.
I could watch a film I've never seen before, which is, from what I believe, not very well reviewed film. Or I could just keep on living.
I could watch Justin Timberlake's Time. Yeah. Or I could not waste my time.
I could not waste that. Yeah. There you go.
That's pretty good, man. I don't know why that sprung into my head. That was just so funny. Perfectly linked up, man. My second film, I'm pretty sure you have seen it, but it's The Burning.
This is the one
Burning.
I thought might come up.
It's got it, man.
I considered The Burning. Obviously, you did
I did an episode with Neil from.
I was not
We
in
Needed
that
Roast.
episode.
You were not. You were banned.
It's an inferior
It's an
episode.
inferior episode. It's a superior episode. It's the standard that we must now be judged by. But yeah, it was. I think that was the first time I actually watched it as well. It was one that I've always kind of like wanted to watch and I've heard about. And I watched it for the first time maybe like 18 months ago, maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think you watched it all before. I watched it before you because I remember telling you about it, you saying how much you want to watch it. Because the idea to do the episode kind of was like, when you get around to watching it, we'll finally do it. And then finally when we got around to it, I brought the film to you again. And so it was, I was cast out.
Yeah, you were cast out from that. And... yeah, I don't know. I think it started like we're doing summer slashers. We got to have one campground-based slasher.
Yeah.
And it starts off kind of really cool. It's built around this urban legend of Cropsey. There's a good documentary about that urban myth itself, which is really quite creepy to watch.
Yeah.
And it's based on like this nutcase basically in New York City or like on the outskirts of New York, who was killing people. And effectively it starts off with a group of camp kids playing a trick on the old drunk, the old drunk caretaker.
Yeah.
And
there's always an old drunk crazy guy,
old crazy lad, a guy suffering with alcoholism. That's the butt of every joke.
Yeah, alcoholism, mental health issues. Any of these problems.
Your fair game.
Yeah, your fair game.
Your fair game, especially in the 80s.
Yeah.
So your slapstick comic relief.
Exactly. If you're like suicidal, it's a punchline.
It's a punchline. You're a cow.
You tried to hang yourself, but he cut you down first. You're good, mate. Off you go.
Yeah. You got to drink every day. Yeah. It's just punchline stuff. And then the weird thing is, we get this quite big opening, where you see Cropsey being burnt, and he's running through, and I think he jumps into the river, and he randomly is released. He has like a bit of like an Invisible Man look later on with like a coat and a hat and stuff, and he randomly kills like a prostitute, and then like this, the film really slows down for quite some time. We get like the camp.
Well, he has bandages.
He has bandages
because he's
burnt to a crisp. And you get Jason Alexander, George
Classic.
the Goat in his debut role.
We got a like from him last time.
We did.
That's our celebrity call.
That's our celebrity endorsement.
Yeah, he endorsed by liking our a tweet about the episode. We got a celebrity endorsement from Jason Alexander himself.
Official endorsement.
Yeah.
And then literally, I think
we're now allowed to brand ourselves and sell merchandise based on Jason Alexander.
And I guess
just from one like of a tweet.
We get to use his likeness as well. We're just interpreting that.
I took out a mortgage based on him, and that's allowed, right?
I'm selling T-shirts with him on it, and my face plastered over Seinfeld and you over Kramer. That's.
I've slept with his wife.
You slept with his wife. You made love.
We're allowed. That's what you get. If you like one retweet of a small podcast, they're going to take it as far as they can take it.
We will take over your life like termites. We are aggressive. But then, as it kicks up, you get some really quite gruesome kills. You've got all the.
That was one thing that really stood out. When I was like, yeah, really cool setup. I like the, I love the setup and stuff like that. But I was like, some of the cool kills in this, I thought, really cool, really inventive kind of kills. Yeah. Really and there was something about this that felt more. I gotta be. It felt almost a bit stronger in concept even than say Friday the 13th. If I'm honest, it felt like Friday the 13th is great. It's worked for its thing, but. As we know, once the sequels go on, they have their own certain charm and that kind of cheesy effect. This one felt like it was trying to be slightly more serious at times. Not all the time, but there was just something that I felt like a little bit of a higher standard at times with this one. It's like a bit of but it's also a little bit forgotten. I feel like it doesn't get mentioned often.
I think a lot of people think about like the raft scene. And they think that's kind of all the film is. But then there are some kind of good deaths leading up to it. It's paced quite a bit differently to, especially the early Friday the 13th films, where it seemed like it drip-fed kills, and then you just had like, I need to go look at the tents. And
this was around the same time as the first one.
And it was just after
they were
the
literally
first
so close. I
think the success of the first one made, I think maybe Harvey Weinstein. He was like, get making this film. I need to rape actresses. I need something to do. Get making this film now. I think that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
And it just kind of, it is very similar to Friday the 13th, but I think it feels stronger than the first couple. I think Tom Savini might have done the effects for the burning as well. I'm sure I believe that. I read he did. They definitely, I think, look better than the first two Friday the 13ths. And then it has a really interesting kind of ending. It just, out of nowhere, fucking Cropsey rocks up. He looks like a fucking ball bag on a hot day.
Yeah, well, it was Tom Savini.
And he's got a flamethrower, and he's just in, and he's just, there's like a mine for some reason, and he's just fucking chasing a guy with a flamethrower in a mine, and then they blow him up, And it I don't remember it teasing a sequel either, but I remember it just being like a really fun summer slasher,
Yeah, it was still, like as I said, it was still a kind of a rip-off, a copycat.
Oh yeah, of course, undeniably.
Of Friday the 13th, but it kind of took its own way, or even the My My Bloody Valentine is very, it's very like out of nowhere kind of thing, but it's, I don't know, there was a certain kind of inventive about it. I thought it was quite good. I thought all the characters I thought were quite interesting and stuff like that, a little bit more than your basic cut-out characters that you sometimes get a little, but with Friday the 13th maybe.
And not only
some
that,
other slashers, camp slashers.
But I find like, and especially with the film that we're going to be talking about next week, to tease you again, is something that's a bit different to a lot of the Friday the 13th is, when in Friday the 13th, it's always basically the counsellors who get there to set the camp up. They're the ones getting killed. Whereas in this one, the camp's full, and in the film we're talking about next week, the camp's full. So you always
already working and running,
and you have a bit of like, who's got to die in this? Because there could be they could all fucking be killed.
Just
you know,
walk around just slashing all the children, slash all the adult, everyone just fucking
like Jason Alexander. You know, he's in it, and he's not just like a little side role. You know, he has a few speaking lines. You can tell he's got that, you know, George Costanza charm. But he is, you know, he doesn't die, and there's a lot of them that are like that. You know, it's just like scenes back at the camp and stuff like that, and it feels more fleshed out almost than when it's just an empty camp with 6 counsellors who
that's
go
all
there,
you've got.
you
Yeah,
know?
you've got no one else. So there's a little bit more of a you don't know if every person's going to go, and it's definitely a fun summer slasher.
And now we go down to the last one. And this is your little reminder to hit that subscribe button, and this is where we see whether we've crossed over.
We definitely haven't crossed over.
You never know.
No, so my last choice. So it's kind of mine have kind of gone down each time in terms of like from a quite prestigious to a kind of somewhat forgotten kind of
but equally
lower, but slightly probably a roundabout or lower kind of budgeted or lower thought out process to finally the low of the low budgets, the lacking one. Mine is Camp Blood.
What?
Do you remember Camp Blood? Camp Blood is a horror film. I'll show you.
Show me. Fuck, man.
Do you remember watching this?
Is that the one where there's like a school bus in the middle of a camp, and then the guy just like starts killing them, and he's like smacks like a pregnant woman's stomach, and the baby like bursts out of her? No.
This is even like share than that. I always remember this. This was a period. This is more. I chose this one more for the period.
This is a Goosebumps episode.
We used to choose we used to buy basically the cheapest.
The £5 challenge.
Going into CX and buying literally as many as you can for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you're buying the cheapest, the bargain barrel, the 50p's, the £1 or lower kind of thing is what you should be getting. So you should be leaving with 5 films kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we would buy those ones or buy a couple of those each time, bring them back, and we'd basically just watch them on a Friday night. So anything we'd have like Dragon Wars or
the most expensive
Screaming
film.
No Man,
Screaming No Man. Giant Shark versus Killer Octopus.
Yeah, all of the low level shit. What is it? Monster Mayhem or something like that. There was the horror
Monster Brawl
or something
with Kevin
like that.
Nash.
Yeah, that came with its own cards and everything. So we bought loads of those ones, and this was one of the ones we got, Camp Blood, which was I just remember it because this was a slasher of this is the lowest level of the slasher which you get kind of thing. This is like a student film that they've decided to make up there. And I don't know why it popped into my head, but I just went, you know what? I know that it's set in the summer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's alright.
I know it's set in the summer. And
very pleasant for our listeners to hear.
Yes.
You wretched beast.
My retching voice. I know when it's set, and I know it's a straight up slasher. And I'm not saying it's a good film, but it's a film that probably most people have never even heard about. And why not bring the spotlight to something that people will be like, maybe you need to have a Google of it, like Rob is right now.
I am, because what the fuck? I'm sure this is the film that we watched where there's just, that's all I remember is that, because I remember a guy with a clown mask, and there is randomly a school bus.
I think there is. In my head actually though I'm thinking there is a part when they have because this is one of those when you make one of these really low slasher kind of things, you see them all the time. You can find them all over YouTube nowadays because that's where most of them end up now. But back then, then people would sometimes make them and manage to make one just enough that some studio, some tiny studio, go I'll make you some DVDs of those and I'll put them around, and that's kind of what you've got with this one, and the funny thing is, this has 11 sequels. Because someone's just made them in their backyard and decided to go, I'm going to make more of these.
Well, it's Brad Sykes who has done Camp Blood 2, There is.
He did not do all the Camp Bloods. Someone else took it over and took it from him. He's done a lot of low, like probably what you'd probably think of as like sci-fi channel level horrors.
Nightmare, Shallow Point, Babes in the Woods. I have to check that. Witchcraft 12, In the Lair of the Serpent.
Goth.
Demon's Kiss, Goth, yeah.
Mutation, Plaguers. Yeah, they're just these like simple, and they are all definitely low level within these kind of ones. Within the Woods, which is the third one, but not called Camp Blood in the title.
Now, I don't even remember this.
This is...
He did Plaguers as well.
Yeah. It's as simple as it basically gets. It's a bunch of people in the woods out kind of going on camp or break down. Then they break down on the road. Sorry, they're on the way to somewhere. They break down, and that's one of the first bits I kind of remember was because of how we were watching it. Like, Jesus Christ, these actors are terrible, because these are your standard day-to-day actors. This is one of the ones though. I remember it because I was like, this was actually quite fun to watch with a couple of beers with friends.
Yeah,
this is a good one to put on. I actually think. In a someone, if you want that kind of so bad it's good, like
it is.
It's so bad that you will have a laugh if you grab beers with mates, sit round on one summer's eve and just go, yeah, we'll just fuck it. we'll just make fun of this film throughout, and yet it becomes kind of fun because that's what you're doing. You're enjoying it more because you're like, we've got some talking points of this film.
It has a 2.5 rating on Letterboxd.
There you go. So that's not that bad.
Well.
I mean, it's not good, but there's a lot of films made for 250 million
that have that. Well, I mean, I think if we're talking about Sting, that we recently did a review of, that has a 2.6.
Exactly, there you go.
You gave it 2.5.
I gave it 2.5.
I gave it 3.
Yeah, it was being nice.
Yeah, it's being nice.
And this isn't something I need to go deep into because this is your standard slasher. It's a guy with a clown mask on his face. We apologise for all of the coughing.
Yeah, I wasn't coughing until you came back.
Yeah, and now I've spread illness all over this land.
Yeah.
And now everyone at home's now coughing. It's an airway-based disease.
It is.
It's also spread through.
By listening to this podcast.
Yes, there you go. I've just made a new coronavirus and it's spread through your ears.
But the only cure is to like and subscribe. See, I gotta get that in there, man.
It is like. It's always fun to watch, kind of, I think, sometimes these kind of student-y kind of horrors, because you're just, like, thinking, like, you can sometimes see how they've made it, or how they've done the effects. So, like, it has a bit when, like, the clown slashes down into the guy's head, and, like, the guy's head in half. But it's not like the guy's head split in half, it's like the knife is in his head.
The knife is in
so you can see it's, like, the classic, like, basically, like, they've bought one of those machete kind of thing where the handle hat goes over his head and just hide it through the hair, mix that hair in so you can't see it kind of thing. Or like same with his arm, like, oh my god, it looks like his arm's chopped in half. But yeah, they've just used like that slight effects of those kind of things, or like blood pouring down, or like someone like hanging, or like they've slit on the back and just like they've basically just put a bit of paint on their back or something. Yeah. You know what I mean? They've tried with the blood, but yeah, there is blood in Camp Blood, but it just is. It's not so I'm like, oh my god, recommend to go and see it. But if you, and there is a lot of people out there who just love a shit horror.
Yeah.
A real shit, like a real, and not to ditch it, you know, for what is basically a no budget, self-done kind of thing, there's somewhat of a charm to it, you know, because it's that, you know, you can tell they've tried hard.
Yeah.
They've tried to scout like some interesting locations. There's the one where they have like, this one dude has like a fight in the middle of like some little kind of water kind of fall bit, and they're like going around. You can hit like the machete like crashing against it, and then it's like they're trying to make some action scene in the middle of it kind of thing with him with his little blade and stuff like that. And they've tried, you know what I mean? They tried to have a set up a story, and you know they have the character, the final girl that you're following, and you know all of her friends start to die one by one, and she's freaking out. You even have the Friday the 13th. Why do I always forget what his name is? Crazy
Ralph.
Crazy Ralph. Yeah, they've got basically an exact copy of that kind of Crazy Ralph character. It's all there. It's all the tropes, all the things you want. Man. But again, it's just a fun. I think it's just a fun one, and it kind of made me think of not only just that it's set summer, but also kind of reminded me that that's basically what we did. We got beers and watched this on
so much stuff like that,
and we just literally watched. But I remember it mainly because I just remember us all like having such a laugh at it, kind of like enjoying it so much because it's just like these films are terrible. And this was all the films we were basically. Most of them all weren't.
Oh, yeah, of course.
There rarely ever one that actually ended up being good, but most of them were so bad they're good. And that's a good thing, because you can have ones that are just plain bad, which are just boring and bad.
I remember we watched the one where Osama bin Laden was a zombie.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that was just awful.
It was just terrible. Like, it sounds like fate. Some of the ones like that you'd think should be amazing, not specifically like, say, Zombievers, which I think we watched
that
along those lines. But they were not as interesting as the title made them appear. Or once you got past Sharknado 1 or 2, like you were like, okay, we've done this now.
It's done.
We've done this. It's not interesting anymore. You're just like stupid for stupid's sake. But yeah, that's my final choice. That's why, as I said, all of my choices, apart from the first one, are not films that I think are great films. Yeah. They are not my top films of all time. They are not films that I will constantly go, I'm going to watch this every summer.
I'm going to watch it all the time.
But they are films that I was like, yeah, let's go for some left-wing kind of random choices, and maybe you've learned about a new horror franchise you'd like to discover now. Camp Blood. You've got 11 that you can watch of different qualities and variations. And, I'm sure you'll enjoy our new feast for your ears.
Yes. Enjoy watching all 11 Camp Bloods, and make sure you let us know, the best ones and which is the time, the time.
Which is the one to watch. I think like there's a Return to Camp Blood or something like that from like 2016. So there are modern day ones too. So don't you worry.
Yeah, don't you worry. We got you there. My final one is The Cabin in the Woods.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and a little cheeky one.
I think this was one of my choices on the summer horror episode,
and that's why I was expecting you to maybe. I've been showing
I
my
went
trousers
back and
down.
checked, so I wouldn't repeat myself. Otherwise, I probably would.
Whereas I should have gone back and checked, because I've made doo-doo in my pants.
Yeah, I was going to say we probably did all these films. All of your choices were on that last. Like, you just
in fact, I think every episode we seem to do summer slashes.
Yeah,
and we just forget. And
every episode's just
nobody listens.
Slashes. We've talked about X like at every episode for the last 100 episodes.
Yeah, I feel like we're just stuck in some kind of loop where we just do this episode.
We're done.
We're done, mate. But yeah, Cabin in the Woods, it starts off as that kind of like, modern day, alright, it's just a bunch of tropes going off into the woods, and it's gotta be, just like a standard kind of slasher film.
Yeah.
And it starts to, it plays with it as we're kind of going through, you get like the main character, you get her, the jock played by Mr. Chris Hemsworth, you get like the slightly nerdy lad, you get the stoner, and you get the slightly loose girl, and then you're kind of thinking, oh, these are my tropes, this is who I'm going to be.
Yeah. We
get like a really creepy kind of like service station / gas station on the way to the cabin, and it's as we get to the cabin things start to settle in, and you think you're like, oh, I've seen this all done by kind of better films.
It knows exactly the tropes they're trying to like make you like assume at the start of this film.
Yeah, and it's really well done, especially if you go into it blind. I remember you telling me.
If I remember correctly, this actually was one of those ones, unlike what they do now.
Yeah.
Back then, the trailer did make it did add in a few shots that made you think, oh, what's that?
Yeah.
But it didn't give away the fact that it was basically still just like a cabin in the woods story.
Yeah.
Which, is a good thing. Like, I remember watching it and it being like legitimately like surprising, being like, fuck, okay, what the hell's happening?
And that's what happened with me. So the first time I watched it, I was kind of like, oh, it's just like a cabin in the woods, regular film. They go to the basement and you start seeing all the weird stuff.
Yeah.
And then you get the diary.
Evil Dead and stuff like that. You're just thinking, Friday the 13th, Evil Dead, all these.
Yeah, you're like, okay. And then, they basically picked the diary of like this undead hillbilly family. And I was like, okay, this is what it's got to be. And then I think you get like 2 deaths relatively quick. And I was like, maybe I've kind of seen this done by better films.
Yeah.
And then it really kind of goes left field. A lot of the times as the film's playing out, you see these 2 office workers who are talking about all this kind of stuff in the background.
Yeah.
And it's only really as the film kind of enters into the last act that it all comes together, and it just becomes an absolute fucking bloodbath. And you get shots and snippets of all of these things that they could have been fighting instead.
It goes so fucking insane.
It goes so insane, and then it teases other like I think you could make like a TV series of horror comedies around this, and each episode is a different
creature,
thing,
yeah,
a different creature and a different trope.
Because they've basically got every creature is, and they've kind of stated that almost every creature is somewhat inspired by some kind of other horror creation.
Yeah,
they've kind of done it in their own way. I think you've got one that looks like kind of a Hellraiser that's got kind of things sticking out his head.
Yeah, it's like a Hellraiser.
You've got like obvious werewolves and stuff like that, kind of base ones, and you've just got each of the. I think you've got a Leatherface-esque kind of guy as well, like a chainsaw wielding or some kind of tool based thing.
Yeah.
There's loads of them, and then it's really interestingly done.
And when you see the other countries that it's happening in, you get like a spirit. You get that's very much like kind of like The Ring, or and it's a really clever put together film. And if you haven't watched it, it's fucking banging, going blind. But if you have watched it, then it's kind of fun. And every time you watch it, you kind of pick up on more stuff, and it all starts to make a lot more sense. And you find out that it's a really well done and well paced movie.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the fact that quite a lot of them are gone by the time the reveal kind of comes down, but it's just about the mayhem that kind of goes around it, kind of thing. Like, particularly like say Chris Hemsworth one, I just always found hilarious.
Always find hilarious.
Man. Like so funny the fact that they play out that Jock's character to perfection, almost like to its perfected end.
He's got to be perfect. He's got to save the day. Oh no, fucked.
Yeah,
and it's so good, And I remember watching it like the first time because they foreshadow that with like a bird that flies into it.
Yeah,
and I was thinking like, what the fuck? But for some reason, my fucking dim-witted brain registered it and was like, huh? And then just
go there.
No, just left it and was like,
that. I remember thinking he wasn't going to make it, but not the actual. I forgot the barrier part.
Yeah,
so,
the barrier, and it's so well done. And it's just those kind of like really funny bits in it.
But it's also that's the thing, and it is because it's Josh Whedon, isn't it?
Yeah, the Whedon.
But it's very it's obviously so self-aware, but it does have an kind of really smart kind of under part to it that kind of that involves the office work and that kind of balances out. And once that mystery starts to build in the film a bit more, you're like, what is this? Like, this is the more interesting part, really, because I've seen this film before.
Yeah.
But this part, what's this? Like,
Go back to these lads.
Yeah, like what's going on? And it is. I can't remember the last time I rewatched it, and I can't remember how much I've rewatched it actually since I originally watched it. So that's the only thing, is I remember mentioning about it, but also being like, I need to go back and revisit it, because I feel like it's one that was probably, like I've heard people say, is so clever in like the setup.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's great when you only don't know anything, but it's also very clever when you start to notice all of the little things of how they've been placed perfectly to be set up of that, like they're setting up different places of different horror tropes around the world, obviously, and this one is like the exact setting for some Midwest kind of people. Some college kids. Where are you going to send them? Oh, it's got to be in the woods. It's got to be a cabin in the woods.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like anyone. But like you said, it would be cool, and you could also, the film. The end of this film goes to the craziest fucking thing. The whole end of the world kind of Mayans kind of like madness. But at the same time, other ones, all the different places around the world and stuff like that, you could make a different setting each time and stuff like, you know what I mean? Having the Japan-based, like, grudge style, cool. And your, and just all these discoveries and seeing more of the different styles of monsters and different parts and stuff like that would be really cool.
Yeah, it'd be so good, I always thought it's really
like 13. It's like 13 ghosts, isn't it?
Yeah.
Although, actually, I think I have heard that they
actually
are finally doing something with that, based on the thing. But we always said like the TV series would be so cool just to follow the different characters.
Some things just write themselves, don't they?
Yeah. Or just to give more stories with just the characters in the glass, not the other people, just the characters in the glass that contain the ghost themselves.
Yeah. But no, that's it, man. I think that's my pièce de résistance.
The summer slashes. So obviously Texas Chainsaw is one that
Texas Chainsaw is one,
and Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th.
Neither of us went for either of those franchises, which I think is a good thing. One, because they've been done, and we've done them, and they're very obvious that they are summer and they're slashes, but everybody knows those, and they are well-worn kind of areas.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think what were the other ones? I had two more.
The other ones that I was considering was one is known as the Chapter 2 of Fear Street, 1978.
That was one of mine.
Yeah. That
was such a good one.
It was awesome.
I was considering rewatching that the other day.
Same.
I haven't gone through it again because they're making another one.
Yeah, Prom Queen.
Yeah, so I'm excited for that. Just getting the one this time though. I kind of liked the whole.
Man, that was fucking good.
When they released those week by week, there was a real event about that.
It was.
Yeah, I kind of wish they did that again because I thought it worked really well.
Yeah.
And I think that's what helped its popularity as well. It seemed like a big event.
It was, man.
You know, and I think this one will obviously do well on Netflix as well.
Yeah.
But you know, there was something really big about that, and you know, it was really strong kind of trilogy. And the second one, I think we both said was, our favourite,
yeah.
The most consistent of the three, I think.
Yeah. There's a film called All the Boys Love Mandy Lane, which
I've never seen that one.
Was Amber Heard's first film.
Yeah, I've heard of that. That's the one I've seen and heard of a lot, and I've never watched it.
It's fun. It's another one where it's like summer holiday, kids go to this kind of like I think one of them's got a house similar to like a Texas Chainsaw style house, where it's like in the sticks a little bit, and then you know you've got one of them is offing them, and it kind of it's got like a bit of a twist. It's got kind of like a bit of a gruesome moment that I was always stuck in, to do with the eyes. You know, I don't like the eyes.
Might have to check that one out.
Yeah.
I also had again one that I thought would be very forgotten, and it's not like a full-on horror. It's kind of a thriller, but it has a slight little horror kind of part to it, which is called The Perfect Getaway. It had Timothy Oliphant and Mila Djokovic and Steve Zahn and another actress who I can't remember. And it's basically about like two partners that go away on a holiday, and then in the middle of the woods, and then they meet as they're going like on a hike kind of thing.
Yeah.
They have two other people that they meet on the hike, and another couple who kind of come across like the perfect couple, but they say that they've found someone dead.
Oh shit.
So they've found someone dead on the thing, and it starts to kind of unravel in that kind of thriller way of like who. And they start to kind of play as they're like, who's going to do it? But then they start to think people are going to blame them. It's got to be one of them. It's got to be one, and it kind of plays out in that way.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a generic. It's like a mid 2000s, early 2007, 2008 kind of one. You know, it's not like brilliant, but it had some quite good twists in it, and it has quite good suspense, like playing off of the couples against each other.
Yeah.
And it's one that I think I saw in the cinema. And I feel like it's something that barely anyone actually saw. So it's like it was like a random one that I used to just have my unlimited card when I was just a teenage, just be like, I'll just go and watch it. I'll just go and watch whatever's on, basically, like all of them. And that was one of the ones I just randomly watched. And it was just it was a pretty solid little kind of thriller, like slight horror kind of flick, kind of thing, which set in like on their breakaway, following their like honeymoon and kind of things like that. And it was an interesting little flick. So yeah, The Perfect Getaway. Check it out if you've never heard of it.
Any others?
That's it. I think I'm out.
Yeah.
I was surprised I got 5, to be honest.
Yeah, because the slashers, you'd be surprised that for the summer, if you're not doing Friday the 13th and not what we're talking about next week, like slasher wise, there's not huge amounts.
No. It was quite surprising how few are set in summer.
Yeah. Remember to hit that subscribe button. Come and let us know your favourite summer slasher. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CMTH Podcast. And yeah, we will see you next week where we talk about another summer slasher that's rather controversial but also pretty fucking class, if you ask me. Enjoy your summer. We will see you soon. Take care. Goodbye.